is real. Listen.
Hi, I'm Traci.
And I'm Kathy.
And this is Curious Explorers. Hi, Kathy.
Hey, Trace.
It's my favorite time of year. I know it might be yours too.
I think this is absolutely my favorite time of year. And for the first time in years, it feels like this time of year. Although today's super humid, but we've had like a great kind of, the leaves are changing. It's getting dark a little bit earlier. It's cool. It's almost sweater weather. You know, to me, it's pleather weather. But invariably this time of year, I like to, get home, grab a blanket and just kind of cuddle up. And I love scary movies. I know you do too.
I do, but I'm laughing because as if the museum isn't scary enough.
Yeah, but I do. I just love losing myself in a story, and I really lean more. I'm not a big slasher person. I'm not a big horror person. No. I love the recent trend in The Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor, which are great movies. They're a great series. Yeah. But I also love a good supernatural horror film, something that tells a story and kind of brings you along with it. So I thought that we could talk about the top 10 scariest supernatural movies. And these are in order.
Scariest or best?
Scariest. We're going to go scariest, which I would argue is best. Right?
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing by which they should be judged, is how scary they are. A lot of these are actually based to a certain degree on true stories, or at least have some kind of a basis. There's a connection to historical stuff, which is not to say that just because I included in the list that I necessarily believe the primary story. In most cases, I do.
I bet I could guess at minimum 5.
Oh, I bet you could guess. I think there's 1 or 2 that are a little bit older that maybe you wouldn't. And some of them are scary in a non kind of shocking way. They're more like what I would consider like a insidious kind of way. Okay. So
I'm thinking of all these movies now.
So I will say that you guys can obviously give us your opinion on this list, add to this list. So this is going to be my viewing list for the next couple of weeks. So feel free to add to it. And if you disagree,
is the Babadook on there?
No, it's not.
One of the scariest movies ever.
You know what? To me, the Babadook was really more annoying than it was scary. Although I loved the Babadook. I thought the visual on that was phenomenal. Like I thought the design was amazing.
All right, I can't believe it's not on there.
Well, you know what? There's
It'll
lots
be on
of great
our
movies.
Secondary list.
There's lots of great movies, right? And this does lean very much U.S. And the Babadook, I think, was Australian. So. Supernatural horror films, well, we love them. They tap into our deepest fears. And a lot of them, they explore, things that, Traci and I talk about all the time, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't talk about demons. They don't talk about ghosts. They don't talk about...
Who are these people?
Yeah, I know. They sound really boring. Just kidding. You seem like lovely people, I'm sure. So I'm gonna present these in the order that they're in reverse order. So 1 being the first. And I don't agree with this, but only because it's older and because I definitely think it's on this list. I definitely think it's top 3, but I'm not sure that I found it to be the scariest. And that, of course, is The Exorcist. So The Exorcist is 1973, right? William Friedkin's The Exorcist is regarded as one of the most terrifying supernatural horror films of all time. And I'm going to say, I think that's true. It's based on a true story. So it's loosely based on a true story. And at some point we should probably cover that true story.
Definitely.
The movie follows the demonic possession of a young girl, Regan, and the subsequent exorcism performed by two priests. Now, what makes this film so chilling is its slow buildup of tension combined with its disturbing imagery, which I absolutely agree with. I mean, some of the things that they had that child do, I think, is what
Ugh.
made it so terrifying. The imagery was unprecedented at the time. From her transformation into a foul-mouthed, violent entity to the unsettling medical procedures that she undergoes. Every scene layers on discomfort on top of discomfort. The film plays on our primal fears, not only of possession, but of the vulnerability of children and the thin veil separating our world from dark, unseen forces. I 100% agree with that. I think the thing that was really terrifying about that film was the fact that the victim in this case was a little girl. And there's a couple of scenes like, you just feel for the mom, right? Watching this happen and feeling completely incapable of saving her child and then some of the sexual imagery or the vague, the kind of sexual implications and things like that, for it being 1973, and it was at that time when
it's still scary to watch.
Oh, it's still scary.
It's still scary.
And honestly, if that kid wasn't such a great actress, she was such, I don't know that you would get away with doing that these days, with a child. I don't know that you
not,
would.
Kind of.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot that can be done with CGI.
I think she was older than she was portrayed as being.
I still think she was only 14. I mean, she was 12 in it. I think, and honestly, it's been her entire life. Linda Blair's entire life has been the fact that she was Regan, and which is not to say that she hasn't, had a full life, but I mean, her entire career has been like this. I thought it was a very subversive film. Right. It also presented the Jesuits. It was a time when, Vatican II had very recently kind of happened. It was 1965, I think. And, the idea of a personal God or a personal devil was not something that the Jesuits believed in. The priest in it was a Jesuit, and he had to come to terms with the idea that he was dealing with a personal evil, evil with a personification. I agree. I think it was one of the scariest supernatural films, and I think a lot of the ones that come afterwards are owe themselves to that film.
Oh yeah,
right.
So I want to know I'm curious to know what's next because.
So the next ones are relatively new.
I have in my head.
We've recently had what we would call elevated horror. So we went through lots of different genres of horror where you have in the 80s and the 90s, you have slasher. In the 90s, it was kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff. And then in the aughts and the teens, we have what we call elevated horror, which is incredibly well-written screenplays with great directors, really good actors who are delving into lots of different familial ties and the things that really scare us. So in 2018, we have a film directed by Ari Aster, a supernatural horror masterpiece that weaves themes of family grief and mental illness into a story of occult manipulation. And that, of course, is Hereditary. Have you seen Hereditary?
I can't remember if I have. I think so.
Well, I will tell you, if you had seen Hereditary, you would remember it. It is one of the few films that absolutely terrified me.
I think I did, but for some reason, I don't know.
It's Toni Collette, and it's got one of the most memorable scenes in a horror film. And I'm not, because it is 6 years old, but I'm not going to spoil it. But
I think you can spoil it.
There's a scene in it. And anyone that's seen the movie knows the scene that I'm talking about, where there are things that you just don't think they're going to do on screen. And they did it. They did it on screen in this movie.
I gotta go look that up again.
It's a great movie. I actually thought Gabriel Byrne was really, really good in it as well. But it's a story about familial evil, generational evil, excuse me.
Maybe I didn't see it yet.
So it's about generational evil and about a family that is just like holding on to itself, by you know by its fingernails,
Mm.
and this evil that's weaved through it, and ultimately starts to honestly pull it apart. And the film is a slow burn, but then the last, it's like you're like, it's a horror film, but it's really a family drama. And then all of a sudden, like the last half of it, you're like, it is batshit crazy. And it goes where it was always leading. You just never thought they were going to actually do it. It's absolutely I think one of the best horror films ever. One of the truly horrifying films. And not necessarily it's very graphic too, but not necessarily
Ooh,
in a graphic way, like I spit on your grave or something like that, which is horrific in what
yeah,
people do
I
to each other.
can't
This
even.
is, this is, this movie's terrifying. It really, really is terrifying. So if you haven't seen it, Traci, that's on your list. You
Yes.
have to watch that.
And please remind me, who came up with this list? Whose list are we
This is a
reading today?
list of this. This is just a list of highly rated. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just
I'm
went
just
on the
thinking,
internet.
okay, like
Yep.
we'll put a link to where it's published so people can go
It's not
read it.
published. I pulled it. Right. I just kept pulling it. So it's not their list. It's kind of like I took the list, and consistently these were the numbers that they came in on.
Okay. Okay.
So number 3, I disagree with this high placement, but I understand why people do love it, because it does have it has a cachet to it, and I think people do genuinely love this movie. And it's Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
I think it's a pretty scary movie.
I think it's a scary movie. I'm a big fan of the book, which is absolutely completely different from the movie. In fact, I would argue they're ultimately two completely different stories. And what I do love about this, though, to me, this is a great haunted house story, right? So it's, and also obviously the mental and emotional kind of destruction or deconstruction of Jack Torrance's character. I thought it was, I did like this movie. If you go into it having read the book, though, of course it's from 1980, but if you go into it having read the book, you're going to find it has virtually nothing to do with it other than the setting. I did think it was a really scary movie. And I think if you saw this movie as a kid and you saw that woman coming out of the bathtub, you were scarred for life,
Oof.
essentially. It
Lots
says,
of scary moments.
I do like the idea that the building became a character,
Oh yeah.
and that, because you and I talk a lot about whether a building can be haunted, or is it the building, or is it the people? And I think in this particular movie, the building definitely is haunted, but if not for the character, if not for the person, it's like it was like the perfect storm of having that person in there.
Yeah.
I agree with this one. In number 4, it's The Conjuring, 2013. I think that this is another example of elevated horror. And it was James Wan. And it's based on the story of the Perrin family in Rhode Island. I'm going to say it's based loosely on that story.
Okay.
It's also based on the case. It's the first movie based on the cases of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
I was just about to say.
I'm going to say I think Patrick Wilson is a lot better looking, but that's just my 2 cents.
That's enough reason to see the movie.
But well, I'm going to say I take this as a purely fictional movie. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's great. Lily Taylor was phenomenal in it.
Yeah.
The idea of this family being kind of at the being stuck where they are because of financial reasons. You and I talked about that in some other cases as well, where they couldn't move out. And I think it's a mother, father, and 7 daughters. And just the idea that they had moved their lives from New Jersey to Rhode Island to start a new life, and to have these things happen to them. There's a couple scenes in there too that just really lean into the things that scare us. And again, it's the idea of these innocent children being not only the victims of, but the pawns of something, something supernatural that doesn't care about their
evil.
innocence. Yeah, it was certainly mean. Again, not saying whether or not it's just a great movie. It's done, the lighting, the writing, the acting is phenomenal in it. I think it's truly great storytelling, and it's scary. It's just scary.
Okay.
And
So
have you seen it?
I have.
And it's got great practical effects in it, so you're not dealing with a lot of CGI. It's all kind of really done through the acting.
I mean, personally, I prefer movies where they're not overly reliant on, special effects and this, that, and the other thing. I kind of feel like if the story is great,
right,
and the acting is great, and the directing is great, you don't need a lot of fake stuff to make it engaging.
I think that's one of the things that makes this movie great is that they didn't use special effects. They, most of these were practical effects. So there was a lot done with sound, like the idea of that clap game, right?
Yes.
So all you did was hear a clap and you knew there wasn't a kid there. And that was enough to kind of drive it home, and plus Lily Taylor is just a great actress.
Yeah, no, they all did a great job.
Yeah, they did a terrific job. So 2002, we have,
this is number 5.
This is number 5. 2002, we have The Ring. And,
I didn't see it.
You never saw The Ring?
No, and I don't know why I didn't see it.
Oh, you have to see The Ring. You should see The Ring. It stands up. I'm going to say it stands up. So it was, this was the beginning of kind of America's love affair with Japanese horror. So, I mean, we had that in the 50s and 60s with their sci-fi, but Japanese horror was phenomenal in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it was based on a film called Ringu. Essentially exactly the same story. But it's this idea of you interacting with some kind of media and it sets a clock. And the clock is how long you have to live. And the story essentially is this relentless pursuit of our hero, right? Or she's actually trying to save her son, of our hero against her 7-day deadline. And the visual effects are great. The story is really well told. Naomi Watts is phenomenal in it. It does have one of the coolest visual effects from that time period. If you watch it now, you're going to say, "Oh, I've seen that before," but you saw it because they did it, and you also have this lack of a win. So it's not, no one just wins in this. It's a really good story. It's a good story. It's very compelling. And I do think it's terrifying because it's this, you have innocuously done something that has infected you, right? And it's infected you with this supernatural thing. And there is no cure for it. And so time goes by and you're watching them trying to figure out this storyline that's going to somehow save you. And
it's not a feel-good movie.
It's not and I will say there is a Ring 2. So,
okay.
so at least someone survives. This is my personal favorite horror film.
This is number 6.
This is number 6. This is my personal favorite horror film.
I don't know what it could be.
And I'm not judging it based on how I would watch it today. I'm judging it based on my reaction to it when I was 12 years old or 13 years old. And this is Tobe Hooper's Poltergeist, which came out in 1982.
Oh, the original one.
The original one.
That was
absolutely terrifying.
Very scary movie at the time.
Absolutely terrifying. Advanced a lot of special effects.
For them, they were amazing.
But also, it was a great fun movie because the parents were fun. And I will say this about it. It came out the same year as E.T.
Okay.
And I have no recollection of E.T., didn't care about it. I saw Poltergeist about 13 times because
E.T. was probably too feel good for you.
I just was like, why is anyone
benign.
Like, who cares about this stupid thing? Did you see Poltergeist?
No, I liked Poltergeist.
I loved Poltergeist. I love the fact that there was a story. I love the fact that there was a paranormal investigator. You know what I mean? Like, I really, really loved it. It also went on to spawn, I think, 2 or 3 sequels, actually 4. It also is one of the cursed films, right?
Yes. And we
Yeah.
could do a little mini episode, even just
100%.
on what the
Yeah.
deal was with Poltergeist.
And the tragedies that came around it. To me, it's still a film. I don't watch it, because I don't want to lose my kind of childish, or my childlike fear of it, because I'm a little bit afraid that if I watched it at this point, I would see the strings, whereas when I was a kid, I definitely didn't see the strings. But it also had that iconic "they're here," which has become
100%.
You don't even need to know where it's from, but you know what it means.
The staticky TV.
Yes.
Which personally, if you're afraid of something supernatural, don't sit in front of a staticky TV
right.
for too long.
You probably shouldn't.
I don't even think you can do it now.
And again, it's kids. It's kids. This happening to children. Also, the clown. This just iconically terrifying. That's a really good one. And the fact that it's this family. And they were like a loving family. They were a normal, loving family. Very Spielbergian, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In this cul-de-sac and everything.
Very well done movie.
So 2010, we're continuing. This is number 7.
Number 7.
And we're continuing kind of with this
Lucky
elevated.
Number 7.
Right? This is directed by James Wan, who also directed The Conjuring. I think he's one of the best modern supernatural horror film directors that there are. And he directed Insidious. Now, Insidious
I know I must have seen it, and I cannot remember it, which means for me it didn't stand out enough.
So Insidious is about astral projection. And
it's my cousin Nick's favorite horror movie.
It's a scary movie, and it's scary again because of because innocence is not protected, right? So being good or it's irrelevant. There's and again, it's something that there's very little defense against. So, and it's this idea that there is this nether world, this liminal world. And in this liminal world, there are beings that live in this liminal world. I think visually it has some really, really good practical effects. It's very James Wan. There's this one scene where you see these little kids running around and these little ghost children running around, and the mom and the family is starting to realize that her house might be haunted. And you see this, this kid from like the 1920s, and you just hear his little feet, and then he flashes by, and then at some point he turns around and he has no face. And it's just this, again, it's not a special effect. It's an actor. You know what I mean? And it's right there. Again,
how creepy.
Great acting, great performers. Patrick Wilson is in this as well. There's a few other very well known, and of course I can't think of them off the top of my head, but people that you would absolutely recognize. And it's a story of a family kind of being pulled apart by who believes what and what we're willing to accept as what is going on. And there's one point where the father is so kind of distraught at what's going on with his family because his son is in a coma, that he just
remember this.
He just starts going to work and not coming home. So it's how these things kind of disintegrate our relationships as well, until someone is finally willing to say, yeah, I believe that what you say is happening, and how these, it's insidious, right? That's a perfect word. It just kind of infiltrates you, and you cannot get away from it. And I thought it was really good. Number 8 is
if
one
this
of my.
Isn't the others, I'm going to get annoyed.
It is not
keep
the
waiting
others.
for it to appear on the list.
It is not.
I think
the
that's
others.
one of the best done.
I agree. And you still have a couple more that it could be, right?
It might make the list.
It might. I think The Others is a great movie. I'm not sure how scary it was, but I do think it's a great supernatural film.
I think it had one scary scene, and that was enough because you're building up the tension.
Well, I'm going to tell you, we're going to get to it.
All right.
We're going to get to it.
Good.
So,
I was going to have to write a letter, and I don't even know who to send it to.
I believe you sent it to me. I do believe that this film is where it should be. Okay. With
Number
relation
8.
to, yeah.
Okay.
With relation to what the other film that we're talking about. And this is The Sixth Sense.
Great movie.
Great movie. Again, kids. right?
I don't think it's super scary.
Oh, I mean, I think there's moments
I
in
can
it.
see where people would be. Oh, the
Right,
under
and
the
there are
bed thing.
moments in it like where
When the girl
like
grabs him.
right, and where
Or the
he's
tent.
solving the murder, like
Yes.
where and it's frightening for the kid. Right. So the idea that this is stuff that's happening to him that he has no control over, he doesn't want this to happen. And obviously it has a great twist.
Great cast.
Great
Amazing.
cast, great. And I would
All of
argue
them.
that this was the beginning of the elevation of horror, right? Where
What year?
people started looking at this and saying, maybe we don't have to make a cheap movie. Maybe we can make a great movie and it can last. Like, I think this is this would, to me, is a great movie.
I'm
Right?
surprised it's not
film.
higher up on the list, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, but I would say I would argue that its age has prevented it from being higher up. Lots of people will look at it now and say, "Oh, that reminds me of blah blah blah," and it'll remind them of films that came afterwards, because we often forget that the originator did it first,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
And I want to just say, people are afraid of death and dying, and I think the fact that Bruce Willis realizes that he has been dead this whole time, the horror
Spoiler
of
alert.
that, I think most people have seen it by now.
If
It's
not,
still worth seeing, even if that ruined it for you.
Exactly. If not, you've had 25 years.
But the thought that you wouldn't know what happened to you, I think for a lot of people is unnerving.
Right.
On top of the seeing all kinds of dead people who've died tragically. And your safe spaces, like there's no safe space from it.
And the fact that Bruce Willis is haunting this kid. Right? I mean, that's the other thing. Right. So we're looking at Bruce Willis's experience, but Bruce Willis is a ghost that won't leave this kid alone.
He's also arguably the most stable person, dead or alive, in this kid's life. So,
well, and again, it's great filmmaking because the twist is really, really great. But I mean, at the end of the day, the kid is healing Bruce Willis. The kid is, to me, it's just a great movie.
Absolutely.
It's another one of those movies I don't watch again because I don't want to ruin the kind of feeling that I have for it. Well worth. Now, I think this next one, which is number 9,
okay.
You might disagree with, but again, I would argue its inclusion.
Okay.
Because of what it was at the time and how unique and different it was. Kind of like,
I've got one in my mind.
So this is Paranormal Activity from 2007. You're thinking Blair Witch?
No, I was actually thinking there's one with Kevin Bacon, and I can't remember what it is.
Stir of Echoes.
Thank you. Of course you would remember.
So Stir of Echoes is a little derivative, and it wasn't really a big hit. Paranormal Activity to me is very much like the Blair Witch, and I would argue the Blair Witch should be on this. But it's not a supernatural, right? It's not a supernatural, or it's not a ghostly. I think Blair Witch is one of the most innovative, creative films ever made. People watch it now and they're like, oh, but it was this. It was like, you're judging it because of the impact it had, right? So it created something that now you can go back and judge it. Paranormal Activity, though, took the found footage genre and did a ton of storytelling with it and did it in an incredibly innovative way, very, very inexpensively. There was very little gore in it. There was very little action in it. It was mostly these subtle little things. And I do think it kind of ushered in a type of horror film and especially at the time when people were really starting getting into the idea of paranormal investigation from a television and a video standpoint. I thought it was incredibly creative, but it also was great storytelling. So it was inexpensively made. I think they probably made, I don't know, maybe they spent $4 million on it, and it probably
I was going to say $100.
No, I don't think. I think they spent $4 or $5 million on it.
Blair Witch, where they really didn't spend money.
No, Blair Witch they spent, I think it was about $50,000 on it, and it ended up generating about $250 million. This is crazy. This created $1 billion franchise, but it was also a very good film. It was a good film. It had good unknown actors who went by their own names. So if you Googled them or saw them, you were going to find them. You weren't going to find other things that they've done. And interestingly enough, they recently started their own podcast delving into paranormal phenomena, and specifically demons. So it was actually, and it's actually a very good podcast. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. So now we get to number 10. And of course it is 2001's The Others. So I will let you discuss The Others because I absolutely agree with you.
I have seen it a few times, but not in a long time. But the basic idea is there's this woman and her children living in this house, and nothing seems to go quite right. There are elderly staff, a housekeeper, I believe, and cook, and a butler, if I'm not mistaken, who live there. And they kind of look at her like you get the sense as the movie's going on that perhaps she's mentally ill, because there are all of these sideways glances between, the staff, and
she doesn't know the staff, right? So she's
in her own home, in her own manner. And they start
showing up. Mr. Tuttle is one of them. And it's her and her two children. And there's a real claustrophobic vibe to it because they very rarely leave the house, right? So there's
they don't leave the grounds.
You do get concerned. There's a point at which you get concerned at how she's treating the children and the nature of the relationship with the children. And there's also a seance that's going on, and you kind of believe she's being haunted, right? So you get the vibe that she's like, you get the vibe like that she's starting to feel like her home is haunted. And of course,
like she's losing her mind.
She's losing her mind. Her husband comes home from the war for a brief moment, World War II, or is it World War One? I think it's World War II. Because it's the Isle of Jersey, I think.
For some reason, I thought World War One, but
it might be.
I haven't seen it in so long.
I think it might be. Nicole Kidman is phenomenal in it.
She's an amazing actor. And
this is one of those things where because they've done such great research and because they did it so atmospherically, right?
Oh my God.
This is a gothic. This is the ghost story you want, right? And then you get to the end of it. And listen, a lot of people guess the end of it. I guessed the end of it. I'm sure you guessed the end of it. But when you get to it, you're like, it's so satisfying, and it's horrible, right? I mean, what happens, how they became what they are is so horrible, but the story is so satisfying. And it's so satisfying because they went all out to tell you the story to not just tell you the story you wanted to hear, but to tell you it it's like they were like, we're going to give you every single thing you want. Come along with us for that. And it's so done. Beautiful.
So well done.
So well done. So beautiful. One jump scare in it, right? There's one jump scare in it with the medium.
But that's enough because the tension and the mystery are.
There's a great line in it, and I'll always remember because Finola Hughes plays the housekeeper, the head housekeeper. So there's a head housekeeper, and then there's Mr. Tuttle, who is like the groomsman. He's kind of like in charge of like taking care of the place. And then there's a young woman, and I don't remember what her name is. I think it's Annie. And there's a point where they're being very, very, they're being very patient with this woman, Nicole Kidman's character. And, she's locking the doors against them, and then they just kind of walk through them because they don't need to. Doors don't keep them out. And Mr. Tuttle was like, he's looking at this woman, Finola Hughes. She just goes, "I am reaching the end of my tether, Mr. Tuttle," like that, because essentially she's had it. Like she's been patient, trying to let this family figure out the scope of where they are. And what their lives are now, and what's
happened,
and she's at the end of her rope, but it's just this wonderful line, and it's very Irish. But she's like, I am reaching the end of my tether, like that, and that's when they walk through, and visually, they're on this island, and it's like there's a constant threat of bombings, which of course there isn't, right? But there's this constant threat of bombings, and there's the fog rolling in off the moors, and it's so visually beautiful and spooky. It's not even scary. It's just the definition of spooky. I don't think that, I think the others could be higher on this list. I certainly
agree.
think it could be above Paranormal Activity. And there's like 10 other movies that I could put on here as well. But it does seem like this, with the exception of The Exorcist, which I think is a perennial number one. Most of these movies are, well, that's not true. The Shining 2, which America has a love affair with. But I think I think that there's lots of other movies. And right around that time, there could be like Rosemary's Baby and
Omen,
The Omen,
so many incredible classics.
Maybe those would be more demonic, but The Exorcism is demonic.
What's not scary about that?
There's nothing on this list though that I'm like, no, that doesn't belong. To me, that your top 10 would have a lot of ties. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
100%.
there would be 30 movies that were in my top 10 list. I thought all of these were great movies, and some of them I had to be reminded about. I forgot.
Oh my God, now I want to go watch.
I know. It's like, I'm going to go watch the others tonight.
Maybe we'll put the list on our website or on Facebook to get people to kind of go over and check it out at Curious Explorers Show for social media, and curious-explorers.com for the website.
And if you guys have your favorites, make sure you put them in the comments, because I need a list of films to watch, and I'm going to watch all of these, but I'd like to see what you guys come up with. And remember,
absolutely,
they can be slashers, but if they're supernatural, that's even better.
I actually am going to say slashers too easy. Go for something that's a psychological thriller that's supernatural.
Sometimes there's both.
I'm
right?
anti-slasher movie.
I would say.
I think it's just like it's a cheap.
I think Nightmare on Elm Street is I think Nightmare on Elm Street is a really good supernatural film that also happens to be a slasher.
Okay.
But let's see what you come up with.
And I think for another upcoming episode, let's do one on greatest paranormal series.
Yes, I agree.
It's going to be a fun one to put together. So, as Kathy said, please leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. What are your favorite movies? Do you disagree with anything on this list? And until next time, stay curious.
Keep exploring.
Bye for now. This has been another episode of Curious Explorers with Kathy Kelly and Traci Stein. If you enjoy the episode, please do like, share, follow. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Tell us what you'd like to hear more about.
If you like what we're doing here, please consider joining our Patreon.
And of course, until next time, stay curious.